Ladies and gentlemen, I always enjoyed watching the New York Mets of the late 70s, early 80s because they were a good opponent for the Montreal Expos. There was a preamble before, again, the Strawberry, Gooden, Carter era in New York, which eventually led them to win the World Series. But I've always been fascinated by the 1980 Mets team. Not only did it lose the majority of its last 50 games, which threw them out of a playoff spot, they had four catchers that year who combined to hit 0 home runs. So I don't know how that's possible, but we're going to go over that team a little bit and the Magic Four, I used to call them. Now, the 1980 season for the New York Mets was a transition year. A very good baseball developer came in, which a lot of people felt led to the resurgence in the mid-1980s. Now, the 80 Mets season was their 19th regular season campaign. They played their home games, of course, at Venerable Shea Stadium. Led by manager Joe Torre, the former National League star, the team had a 67-95 record and finished in 5th in the National League East. But they couldn't beat teams in the NL West, and the season was terrible in the second half. Now, many people believe this was the beginnings of the 86 World Title squad. On January 24, 1980, ownership of the team changed hands. The group that bought the Mets for an estimated $22 million, the largest amount paid for a ball club to that point, was headed by Nelson Doubleday Jr. and Fred Wilpon. Doubleday was head of the old and distinguished publishing company that bore his name, while Wilpon was a highly successful real estate developer. The new owners promised to invest money to acquire winning players and develop a competitive club, though it took a few years before the new partners were able to rebuild a solid contender. Now, in February, the first big move occurred when the new owners hired the great Frank Cashin, who had spent 10 years in the front office of the Orioles, from 66 to 76, during which time the Orioles went to 4 World Series, winning 2, and of course, 69, 70, 71 to back-to-back-to-back. Final appearances winning 1 of 2. During his tenure, the Mets would see what some call a resuscitation, eventually leading to the team's first world title in 17 years. After leaving the Orioles, Cashin worked outside of baseball for 3 years before joining Commissioner Bowie Kuhn's office as administrator of baseball. It was from this job that the Mets wooed him and installed him as executive vice president and GM. Now, due to the last place finish in 79, the Mets had the first round pick in the 80 draft. They used it to take that great player from LA, Darryl Strawberry, who turned out to be a phenom for a number of years, and who played a key figure on future Mets winning squads. With the 23rd pick, they selected Billy Beane, later the protagonist in the movie Moneyball. Now, under Torre, the team suffered their 4th consecutive losing season, 24 games out of first, although the Mets moved up 1 place in the standings to 5th. They even flirted with 500 until, get this, losing 38 of their last 49 games, which may have led to attendance jumping nearly 400,000 to almost 1.2 million. The team had the motto, "The Magic is back," during the 80 campaign. Notable highlights from the season, including 3 come-from-behind wins in 5 days, 5-4 and 6-5 over the Dodgers on June 10th and 12th after trailing 4-0 and 5-0, and 7-6 over the Giants on the 14th after trailing 6-0. The Mets, however, fell to earth in a 5-game sweep at Shea by the eventual champion Phillies in mid-August, before which they were 56 and 57. Their final home series against the Pirates drew just over 5,000 fans for the 3 games combined. Now, the construction of the then state-of-the-art Diamond Vision electronic scoreboard in center field for 81 resulted in a sharp increase in ticket prices following the season, with GA seating rising from $1.50 to $4. Now, let's put this in perspective. At Exhibition Stadium in 1983, GA tickets, or general admission, were only $2 Canadian, so do the math on that. Now, season standings: Phillies first in the NL East, 91-71. Expos 97-72, with the best home record in the association, 51-29. Pittsburgh 83-79. Cardinals 74-88. New York 67-95, and the Cubs 64-98. Now, opening day stars included Doug Flynn, Steve Henderson, Mike Jorgensen, Elliot Mannix, Lee Mazzelli, Jerry Morales, John Stearns, one of those Magic 4 catchers, the all-star backstop, we'll get into that in a second, Craig Swan and Frank Tavares. Now again, the 4 catchers, ladies and gentlemen, good in their own right, good on defense, but no offense. Butch Benton, war number 15, Ron Hodges, John Stearns, and Alex Trevino. Now, from those 4, it was Alex Trevino that had the 256 average, going 91 for 355 with 37 runs batted in. Not too bad for a part-time catcher. Now, John Stearns had the better numbers. He played 91 games, had 91 hits in those 91 games, 285 with 45 RBIs. Decent number for a platoon backup, but again, no home runs. Now, he didn't hit many home runs on the team that year. I think at the time, Lee Mazzilli led most of the position players with 16. Claudel Washington, I think they had 10. They weren't hitting much homers to begin with. Now, the key part with the Mets in this what they call all pitch no hit squad. Ron Hodges that year batted .238 when 10 for 42 with 5 RBIs, and Benton only had 1 hit in 21 at bats, and basically was the last of the Magic 4. So if you do the rough numbers, ladies and gentlemen, that was 87 RBIs from the 4 catchers, which is pretty decent, but with no home runs. Now, what was kind of weird about this, within 6 years, there were World Series contenders. Now, but the pitching staff was not too bad. Ray Burris was there, Pat Zachary, very underrated player, Craig Swan, and of all people, Mike Scott. Mark Bombach, Pete Falcone, John Pasella, Roy Lee Jackson, again, the former Blue Jay, and Ed Lynch. But Jeff Reardon had a good year in relief, 8-7, 6 saves. Neil Allen won 7-10 with 22 helpers. And Juan Berenger, the former New York Yankee, was there. Now, all these prospects from the Tidewater Tides, the Jackson Mets, the Lynchburg Mets, the Little Falls Mets, and the Kingsport Mets were going to be coming on in less than 3 or 4 years. But I mean, no punch in this team, ladies and gentlemen. Bill Allman was there for a while as well, and he did very little. Mike Jorgensen, basically the most consistent player on the team for a lot of people, and 7 homers, 43 RBIs. So, but again, Lee Mazzilli, very underrated player, future Blue Jay as well, which is quite interesting. And of course, Doug played with Montreal later on, and Steve Henderson, have homer, will travel, played a great outfield. But that Magic 4 with no home runs. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, where did you find out about this? Now, the old baseball registers from the 1970s and 80s would have these information boxes on the bottom, and I happened to notice it, and I had to research that within the register itself. Why he never hit any home runs. Let's put this in perspective, ladies and gentlemen. If all the catchers on the team had at least 4 at-bats over a 162 game season, that'll be 640 at-bats. So imagine sending a starter up there. You could hit 250 with about 80 RBIs with no home runs. The only thing I can compare it with, again, was Tommy Herr when he had 100 RBIs, less than 10 home runs. But I don't know if anybody knows any modern Major League Baseball team having no home runs from their position in the modern era. Let me know. I think this is the last time. I could be wrong. Unless there was an expansion thing in 62 or 69 with the Pilots. To my memory, I'm not talking pitchers as well. I'm talking position player, especially catcher. But when Gary Carter showed up, ladies and gentlemen, nobody remembered Stearns, nobody remembered Hodges and Benton and Trevino. Carter was the guy, who could play between 140 and 150 games. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the story, not of the sad sack New York Mets, but the potential future champions. Because they were playing 500. I remember games that Montreal went to Old Shea Stadium, and he gave it 100%. But I still remember, and if you can remember this, it was the winds in center field, because all the dirt would fly up like in the summer and the spring. It was kind of weird. It was like a like a car park in the middle of winter you would see in northern New Brunswick, where all the dust before the big snow comes along, and potato chip wrappers and the different debris. It was pretty freaky. But John Stearns, read about his career. It's quite interesting. A multiple-time All-Star, and I think one year Johnny Bench couldn't go to the All-Star game, and in tribute to his defensive style and his good management of the game, he got picked to be on the All-Star team to replace Johnny Bench. So that's something, to do his hat. And Lee Mazzilli, ladies and gentlemen, very underrated, a pure Met in every shape or form. Thanks for listening.